And welcome in, everybody. Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports Podcast for this Saturday, February 11th, 2023. Thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, also Instagram for the feedback and the comments, the support for the show we've had. It is less than 48 hours away. Actually, what is it now? 6, 6, 12, 18. Let's see, 36, 36 minus 32 and a half hours. I got it. Early in the morning, you can't keep that away from me. 32 and a half hours until kickoff of Super Bowl LVII between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's get right to it. The line right now is still Philadelphia minus 1.5. The total has gone up from 48.5 to 51. There are no significant injury reports listed for either team. Kansas City is going to have their defensive back Schneid back, and both quarterbacks still recovering from their injuries, but they're good to go. According to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes is 90% of where he's at. Jalen Hurts is coming off his arm injury. He played well against the Giants. They played well against the 49ers. Didn't really have to do much as the defense dominated both those games, and they were able to run the ball. The number one rushing team in the NFL is Philadelphia, and that's where I think Kansas City might have a little bit of less an edge than Philadelphia's defense, is that they cannot stop the run, or they haven't stopped the run this season at all. Philadelphia, the number one rushing attack. Jalen Hurts, a quarterback dual threat, 19 total touchdowns this year, the most of anybody between quarterback passes and quarterback rushes. It's been an amazing year for the Philadelphia Eagles, 14-3. The Kansas City Chiefs, 14-3 coming into the playoffs. Of course, they both won their 2 games as number 1 seeds. So we'll have a live preview for tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern. On Sunday, the regular podcast will be here at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. It'll be live for the first of 2 shows, and then a complete Super Bowl preview. We'll break it down. I'll even give you some prop bets. There's over 200, might even be over 300 prop bets out there in the world of the NFL and Super Bowl. A lot of it has to do on the field. Some of it has to do off the field. I'll give you some of the best ones that I looked at. So Super Bowl preview tomorrow. Eagles, Chiefs, can't get any better. The top 2 teams in the NFL. All right, so with that, less than 48 hours away, as we said. It'll be less than 36 hours away, as we said. It'll be all set up 6:30 Eastern tomorrow on Fox from Glendale, Arizona. What a week it's been in Glendale. For my friends, I've gotten a ton of calls, ton of texts from people that were wondering why I wasn't down there. Unfortunately, I could not get down there, but it would have been great. It would have been hellacious. I might not be up at 9 a.m. in the morning, Eastern time, 6 a.m. West Coast time, 7 o'clock Arizona time to do a live show like this if I was in Arizona all week. So the live offices, the home offices of San Jose, California, where I'm at this morning, a little bit after 9 o'clock, 9:03 on the East, 6 o'clock on the West. When it's Saturday and it's February, it means college basketball, a ton of college basketball. You realize we're only 4 weeks away from March Madness. Selection Sunday will be on March 12th, that afternoon after the Big Ten championship game takes place. So a lot to determine between now and then. Conference play all over the place. Let's get to some of the basketball scores from yesterday. We'll hit the NBA and the NHL later. The NBA won't start till 6 o'clock tonight. Hockey will start at noon, right about the same time that basketball starts. The Daily Post will be out all day Saturday. We'll start at 11 a.m. Start at 11 a.m. for the first iteration of the Daily Post. Then we'll go on as the cycle goes by per game time. The NCAA all day long from noon until midnight pretty much. Saturday NCAA hoops. The NHL starts at noon, and the NBA gets going at 6 o'clock. And don't forget, we'll be back tomorrow for the first of 2 shows. A limited schedule in college and hockey and the NBA as well. All right. Some of the games to get to from yesterday. How about Xavier? Xavier in the top 25. They lose to Butler 69-67. That's a big game because Xavier was up top the Big East, a 7-point road favorite. As I look at the standings here in the Big East now, this changes everything because we've got Marquette. Marquette's 11-3. Xavier now 11-3. They're both tied for the top spot. So a Marquette win today will give them a chance at the lead going into the last few weeks. Creighton is 10-3. Providence is 10-3. You look at the lines today, Marquette 10.5 at Georgetown, Providence 5 at St. John's, Creighton is 4.5. They might be the hottest team in all of the land, in all of the Big East land for sure. 10-3, they've won 7 in a row. They're a half game back, but everybody has 3 losses in the loss column. Xavier, Marquette, Creighton, Providence, and then Villanova is 5 versus Seton Hall, 131. Creighton, a 4.5-point spread versus UConn today. All right, we move on to the MAC conference. Yesterday in the MAC conference, a couple of big games in the MAC. Believe it or not, the Mid-American, they're having themselves quite a year as well too. Ohio University beat up on Akron 90-81. Akron was favored by 2. The over-under was 142.5. But Ohio U, now at 14-11, gets the home win. They're the home dog over Akron. And then the other one was a big one. Kent State 72-65 over Buffalo as a 4-point underdog, 154 the total in that game. So that game stayed under. Standings-wise in the MAC is like this. Kent now 10-2, Toledo 9-2, Akron 9-3, Ball State 8-3, and then it drops to 6-5, 6-6, 6-6. The games in the MAC today: Ball State 8.5 versus Bowling Green. Miami of Ohio, different than Ohio U, 7 versus Central Michigan. Northern Illinois versus Western Michigan at a 4-point clip there. And then Toledo, the other hot team, they're 9-2. They're an 11-point favorite at Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan comes in at 3-8 in the conference. Okay, so that's your MAC. The other games that took place yesterday, and we'll hit some of the smaller conferences as well as we get closer to March Madness. But in the Mountain West on Friday, 2 upsets. Well, actually 1 upset. Arizona Air Force beat New Mexico 89-77 at home. They were a 6-point underdog, 139 the total. Air Force put some points up on New Mexico yesterday. And then Nevada did cover the 9 against Fresno State. It looked iffy for a while, 132.5. The game ended up at 143. 77-67 Nevada over Fresno. Air Force 89-77. Don't have it on the screen, but 89-77 Air Force over New Mexico. So standings-wise, here's where that leaves us. San Diego State, who plays today, they're a 9-point favorite against UNLV. They're 10-2. Nevada Reno got their win yesterday. They're 10-3, so they'll still stay a half game back, maybe 1 game back as we go in. Boise State 8-3, Utah 8-4, and then New Mexico 6-6 by Spartans. San Jose State Spartans 5-6, and down UNLV, Fresno State, Air Force, Colorado State, and Wyoming. Air Force with that win only makes them 4-9, so that was a big upset. Nevada's on a winning streak, 4-game winning streak. San Diego State on a 2-game winning streak as well. UNLV will be the visitor in San Diego today. 9-point favorite. Game on Fox at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of games on Fox today. Boise State 13.5 versus Wyoming. They're right there in the mix. They're 2 games back of San Diego State. And Nevada, they're a 13.5-point favorite against Wyoming. And then Utah State, who got off such a great start, they're 8-4. They are visiting San Jose State, a 5.5-point favorite, 139.5. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to break down all of Saturday's college basketball. Go back and review the NBA from Friday and during the week. Give you an update on the standings there, as they're about 60 games into the season. We're getting close for both NBA and NHL. So the scores from yesterday we'll get to in a little bit, but we'll take a break right now for 30 seconds. Come back and break down all of Saturday's college basketball. Give you a little bit more taste of what Friday was like in the NCAA, and then the NBA and NHL to go through. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. You can reach me at VPartySports. Looking forward to all your comments on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me at Vasu Vaddiparty on Facebook and YouTube, at VPartySports on Instagram and Twitter. Back in 30 seconds with more of the VPartySports Podcast for this Saturday morning and afternoon, a full day of college basketball, full day of NFL, full day of NBA, full day of NHL. Of course, the whole weekend is about the NFL with Super Bowl 57 coming up tomorrow, or LVII for those of you Roman numeral fans. All right, we'll see you in 30 seconds. All right, this is the V Party Sports Podcast for this Saturday morning, about 10 minutes after 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 10 minutes after 6 o'clock on the West Coast. Still dark here. 7 o'clock in Arizona, where Super Bowl 57, LVII, is taking place in Glendale, Arizona. Tomorrow, Media Row, Radio Row, all done this week. Some shows still going on. Obviously, the Philadelphia shows, Kansas City shows are all going still through the weekend. They're going to have watch parties down there. Arizona, I think the Eagles fans have taken over a bar in Tempe, and I don't know the name of it. I was watching the 76ers game last night, and there was an ad for it. So if you're down in Arizona or you happen to be down in Arizona, you're rooting for one team or another, I'm sure there's plenty of places to go to. Don't forget, in Arizona, legalized sports wagering too, so I'm sure you can find a sports book, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel or BetMGM or any of those other sportsbook organizations to take those bets. So less than 36 hours away for Super Bowl 57. I'll be honest, I've changed my mind 4 different times on which way to go to this game. It might just be prop bets. Over 200 prop bets for the Super Bowl tomorrow. Be interesting. A full live show, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific, for a preview, individual matchup breakdowns, prop bets. We'll go through everything that we can. Want to shout out Tony Bruno and the Tony Bruno Show for letting me join them yesterday. It was great to talk Philadelphia football, great to talk Super Bowl, great to talk Media Row, Radio Row yesterday as well, too. All right, just a little recap on Friday's college basketball. Just a few games to go through. Dayton in the A-10 beat St. Louis. They are now at 17-9. St. Louis is 16-9. The A-10 standings, we don't talk a lot of A-10. VCU, Dayton, St. Louis, Fordham, all with 3 or 4 losses. VCU 9-3. Dayton, St. Louis, and Fordham all have 4 losses: 9-4, 8-4, 7-4, and then St. Bonaventure at 7-5. So that's one of the games wanted to go through for the NCAA. A couple other Northeastern games. Let's see. St. Peter's beat Marist. Rider over Fairfield. Mount St. Mary's loses to Siena Iona, 80-59 over Canisius. Let's see. Northern Kentucky got blown out by Wright State. That's a Horizon Conference game. We'll get to all these conferences as we move on into the latter parts of February after Sunday with the Super Bowl. We'll only be less than 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday and March Madness. All right, the NBA. You'll see the NBA lines pop up right here for today. These are the early lines. Check injury reports. Check everything that you can. We'll have, as I said, the Daily Post will be in iterations. The NBA does not start until 6 o'clock tonight, 3 o'clock on the West Coast. So we'll have a lot more NBA talk on the Daily Post. All right, yesterday in the NBA, great game between the Suns and the Spurs and the Pistons, 138-131 the final in 2 overtimes. I had the over in that game. Game had little chance to go over. I think it was going to go over anyway at regulation, but the overtimes definitely helped it. Not only did the overtimes help the over, the overtimes also helped Detroit covering a 5-point spread. Jalen Duren showed out yesterday. 32 for Bogdanovic. Devontae Graham had 31, the newly acquired Devontae Graham for San Antonio. Neither of these teams going anywhere, but it was one of the most exciting games in the association yesterday. The Suns, 2.5-point underdog, get blown out by Atlanta Thursday. They end up beating the Pacers 117-104. The Knicks had a big lead against the Pacers, 6.5-point underdog. Sixers come back in the fourth quarter, 119-108. There is nobody that can stop Joel Embiid right now. He's the best big man in the NBA, and I think being the runner-up the last 2 seasons to Jokic has fueled him. And Tyrese Maxey proved to spark off the bench, 27 points, and they rallied from 12 down. Celtics had a big lead. They were up by 25, did not cover, according to some books. They were a 10.5-point underdog. All right, 10.5, 11.5. The game ended up at 11 points, 127-116, way over. Jason Tatum had 41. So depending on where you got it, the Celtics did cover or did not cover. 10.5, 11, 11.5, maybe even a push for you in some circumstances. Jazz rally late on a Raptor team favored by 8, 122-116. That hurts Toronto a little bit in the standings. We'll give you the standings in a second. The Houston Rockets were a 12-point underdog. There was no way I was going to lay 12 points on the Miami Heat. Their offense just goes into sputter mode every once in a while. 97-95, the Heat win over the Rockets. The Grizzlies held off the Timberwolves. I really liked Minnesota yesterday. A little burgeoning rivalry there between the two teams, especially after last year's playoffs. 128-107, covering the 7 easily. Believe it stayed under at 235. It went over. 231 was the total. It went over 235. The Cavaliers, they're dominant right now. They're playing as well as anybody in the NBA. 118-107 over a Pelicans team that really needs its guys back. No Zion Williamson. Brandon Ingram came back to play. McCollum taking too much of the load there. 118-107. Donovan Mitchell got off to a great start for Cleveland. They went on a big run. 10-point lead after one. He scores 30 in the game, and they were never really threatened in the third and fourth quarter. 118-107. The Thunder and the Blazers, that game will go over every time. The Thunder, best road team, best underdog team in the NBA. I know they had a bad game against the Warriors on Tuesday night, but I guarantee, I don't have the number in front of me, but they're 2/3 of their covers as an underdog, and as a road underdog, I believe it's close to 75%. They rally against Portland 138-129. If you haven't heard of SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 44 last night in Portland. Damian Lillard had himself a good game too, but it wasn't enough. Lillard had 38 last night. Jeremy Grant, 23. The over 239.5 was the play here. Obviously, Oklahoma City as an underdog, you got to take them when they're going at 70%. Mavericks didn't have Luka Doncic last night. They're going to play the Kings again tonight. Not sure if Luka will play or not, but they have Kyrie Irving. They were a 4.5-point underdog going into Sacramento. The game barely went over 232.5, 122-114 as Kyrie Irving had a double-double, 25 and 10 for the Dallas Mavericks. And then the Bucks, who are the hottest team in the NBA, 10-game winning streak now. After coming back on the Clippers in the second quarter, they outscored the Los Angeles Clippers in the second half, 65-55, a 10-point win, 10-point second half. They were up 3 after rallying down 7, down 9 at one point to the Clippers. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 35 points. He could do no wrong last night. He's dominant. He was there everywhere that he wanted to go in terms of the basket. So 119-106 the final. Standings in the NBA right now. Boston 1 game better than Milwaukee. We said Milwaukee on a 10-game winning streak. Boston's won 3. Philadelphia has come off their earlier loss to the Knicks earlier in the week, but they've played very well. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They're 35-19. Cleveland, 4 seed, 36-22. They've won 5 in a row. Those are your top 4. And then Brooklyn, Miami, the Knicks, Atlanta, Chicago, and Washington. Of that group, I got to say, boy, Brooklyn, I don't know if you're a season ticket holder in Brooklyn, it's got to be pretty interesting. Miami, they sputter so much offensively. Atlanta, they've got guys on that team, Murray and Young in the backcourt, Capella at center. They've got guys off the bench that can come and play. Okongwu as a backup center. Chicago seems to be spiraling. Washington seems to be trending upward. Washington 7-3 in their last 10. Toronto just out at 31 losses. Indiana 32. In the West, Denver 38-18, 3 better than Memphis. Denver lost to Orlando the other night. Memphis now 2-game winning streak, still 3 back. Sacramento in third place, even though they lost last night, 31-24 in that Western Conference. They're 2 games better in the loss column than Dallas. Dallas has another shot at them tonight. Phoenix at 31-27. They lose to Atlanta, and they come back and hammer the Pacers. And then the Clippers lose to Milwaukee 31-28. You just can't figure out the Clippers. I just don't know what to make of the Clippers. Can't figure them out at all. Golden State has the Lakers tonight on national TV. No Curry, 28-27. No defense, 29-28 for the Pelicans, who are struggling. Remember when they had the 1 seed early in the year? Pelicans down to the 8th seed. Minnesota, 30-29. Utah, 28-29 after their win. Oklahoma City, Portland, 28 losses, 29 losses. Lakers at 31 losses right now. So everybody's still in from 4 to 10 in the West. And then you go from 6 to 11, 6 to 12. Even Indiana, 6 games back of Miami, 7 games back of Miami in the loss column. That's not that far out, but they're only 3 games back of Washington for the play-in tournament. The play-in tournament, as you know, instituted the last couple of years, 7 to 10 get into a play-in tournament, and then the top 6 have the first round off. So Here's our NBA lines for today. It starts at 6 o'clock. Philadelphia, slight favorite at Brooklyn, 225 the total. Denver visits Charlotte. They're 8.5 and 235.5. Miami, Orlando plays very well at home. I'm surprised that Miami's. I can see a pick 'em, maybe a -1 because they are better. Orlando's not very good, and usually in the third and fourth quarter, Orlando tends to shut it down. 217 the total in that game. Miami -1. Washington 5.5 versus Indiana. Indiana just got spanked by Phoenix Friday night. 234 the total. Got to look at that over. Indiana can score, and they've got their guys back. Halliburton especially. Atlanta off the big win over Phoenix Thursday night. 13-point favorite. 239 the total. San Antonio can score. Proved it last night. Atlanta can as well too. But Atlanta should be better than they are with their record. I just don't know what's going on with them. I don't know if it's defensively or they're obviously getting the points. Knicks 5.5 after their loss against the Philadelphia 76ers. This is back-to-back for both teams. Utah rallying against Toronto, 228 the total. Cavaliers, we said, second hottest team in the NBA. They've won 5 in a row. They've won 5 in a row to the Bucks, 10 in a row. 5-point favorite over Chicago. That seems low to me. I would check the injury reports to see if there's load management involved for Donovan Mitchell or anybody there. A big win at New Orleans last night. Chicago, you can't figure out which way is up with Chicago. 221 the total there. Golden State, 3 versus the Lakers. We all know the LeBron James story this week. Lakers in 11th, 12th. They're in 13th place. 237.5. They made the trades that they thought they needed to make. I don't know if they're going for it or not going for it. Have to see, but they made a couple of trades to see if they can at least get into the play-in tournament. And if they gel, who knows what could happen between 7 and 10. They can play against Utah. They can play against Minnesota. They can play against the banged-up New Orleans team, and they can play against the Curry-less Warriors right now. So we'll see tonight, 8:30 tonight for the 8:30 tonight Eastern, 5:30 for the Warriors and the Lakers. 237.5. We said the Kings and Mavericks go again tonight. Sacramento's still favored. 1.5. They are third in the Western Conference, and they do lead the Pacific Division. Dallas on their heels, though, 2 games back in the loss column. Same number of wins. Dallas usually not very good as a dog on the road, but they had it going last night with Kyrie Irving and his 25 points. So 1.5 and 225 the total. All right, a little bit of hockey here for you. Coming off the All-Star break, Detroit hosts Vancouver. These are 9 o'clock West Coast time games. Calgary at Buffalo, 125. Islanders, 210 at Montreal. Edmonton, 145 at Ottawa. Nashville, 135 at Philadelphia. Dallas, 115 versus Tampa Bay at home. 6 the total there. That'll be a good game. Boston, the red-hot Boston Bruins, 190 versus Washington. 6 the total there. Florida versus Colorado, 130 at 6.5. The NHL continued. Toronto -345 versus Columbus. They had their big signing with Johnny Gaudreau, Columbus did, but they have not done anything this year in the NHL. Give you the standings in a second. 6.5 the total for Toronto. High money lines tonight. Carolina, the second hottest team in the NHL, -220 versus the Rangers. 6 the total there. St. Louis, 190 versus Arizona. 6.5. Minnesota, 120 versus a very hot New Jersey Devils team. Third hottest team in the NHL. Winnipeg 350 over my Blackhawks, 6 the total. And LA hosts the Pittsburgh Penguins after they get a win at Anaheim on Friday night, 6-3. The Kings are a 120 favorite, 6.5 the total. Boston with 83 points, Toronto 72. They're in the Atlantic. Carolina at 76 and New Jersey at 72. Dallas at 70 points in the Western Conference in the Central Division. And they're the only 4 teams that are over 70 points right now. Wild card wise, as we said, 51 games played now, so about 30 games left. Boston, Toronto, Tampa in the Atlantic, Carolina, New Jersey, and the Rangers in the Metropolitan. The 2 wild cards right now are Pittsburgh and Washington, with the Islanders, Florida, and Buffalo on their heels. That's the East. In the West, Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado. In the Central, Vegas has come off their injuries. They have 66 points. Edmonton at 63 and Seattle at 63. The Kraken in the top 3 in the Pacific Division. LA and Minnesota, the wild cards there in the Western Conference. 63 and 58 are their point totals. Calgary, Nashville, on the heels of Minnesota. Minnesota 5 back of the Kings in the point standings. All right. The rest of college basketball, when we come back, don't forget the Daily Post will be out at 11 o'clock this morning, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. We'll have all the iterations of college basketball Saturday, a month away, less than a month away from Selection Sunday. The March Madness tournament, we'll start that Tuesday with the play-in tournament, and then we'll go for 3 weeks from St. Patrick's Day all the way through the opening of baseball season. So after Sunday and after the Super Bowl, it's going to be all basketball and all hockey. I know spring training has started. We haven't mentioned a lot about spring training yet. A lot to talk about as we get to March 1st. We'll have a preview of every team at that point. But we come back in 30 seconds. The rest of the NCAA basketball, the conferences, the point spreads, everything you need to know in college basketball before we get out of here. And, of course, the best bets segment on the Instagram, on the Facebook, and on the Twitter coming up at 11 o'clock Eastern. Part 1 of the best bets for Saturday. Vasu Vaddiparty here with you at VPartySports on Twitter, at VPartySports on Instagram, Vasu Vaddiparty on Facebook, and Vasu Vaddiparty on YouTube. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the VParty Sports Podcast. If you're interested in sponsorships, hit me up directly at VParty Sports on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as Facebook, Vasu Vaddiparty on Facebook and YouTube as well, too. We'll have 2 shows tomorrow. The first one will be at 6 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. Eastern, and then a Super Bowl preview for Super Bowl 57 at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. That'll give you plenty of times to check out your prop bets, check out your game lines, check out your individual player props. So many props. I can't even explain how many props there are. Those of you that are seasoned bettors that are in Arizona or wherever you're doing it legally or maybe not so legally are doing it, you'll see all the prop bets that are there for Super Bowl LVII. Okay, college basketball. The ACC. Big schedule in the ACC. North Carolina State is at Boston College. There's 6.5 points. Pitt at FSU. 4.5 for Pitt. Virginia Tech at Notre Dame. 143. The big game of the day, the 2 big games of the day, UNC is 7 over Clemson. Surprising that it's that high. I know North Carolina's played well. Clemson struggled this last week, but Clemson's on the road. Haven't played as well on the road. And Virginia hosting Duke. 6 for Virginia at 126. Duke got blown out by Miami on Monday night. Wake Forest 14 over Georgia Tech. Miami is 20.5 over a god-awful Louisville team, 147. Clemson and Pitt and Virginia are all tied at 10-3. Miami 10-4. NC State 9-5. Duke 8-5. Wake and Syracuse 8-6, and then North Carolina at 7-6. That's the top half of the bracket for the ACC conference. All right, moving on to the American. Very interesting scenario for the American. The standings in the American Conference: Houston 11-1, Tulane 9-3. Their game is postponed against East Carolina. Don't know if it was COVID issues or what the issues were there, but that game postponed. They may be playing it on Sunday. Let me check the Sunday schedule here and see if they've got anything going on Sunday. East Carolina, Tulane postponed. They are not playing on Sunday, so there must be something going on there. Tulsa, UCF a 14-point favorite versus Tulsa, and then Cincinnati a 9.5-point favorite versus University of South Florida, 147 the total. Houston 11-1, Tulane 9-3, Memphis 8-3, and Temple 8-4. Cincinnati 7-5. Those are your top teams there. Houston 2 games up on Tulane right now in the American Conference. They are number 2 in the country as well, behind Purdue. All right, speaking of the Big Ten, Maryland, an 8-point favorite over Penn State. Purdue and Northwestern won on Thursday. Illinois, a 5-point favorite versus Rutgers, 132.5. Wisconsin 3 at Nebraska. Don't be surprised about Nebraska coming back and playing well. Nebraska, a 3-point underdog, 127. And then Michigan and Indiana. That's a big game. Michigan is red hot right now. The way they destroyed Ohio State, the way they destroyed Michigan State a few weeks back, they've got the number 16 Indiana Hoosiers coming in. 6 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. Michigan, a 3-point favorite, 144 the total. How does that impact standings? Well, Purdue is 3 games better than Rutgers. They're 12-2 right now. They blew out their opponent on Thursday. They beat Iowa by 14, Northwestern by 6 over Ohio State on the road. Penn State, Maryland, 8.5 for Maryland. Rutgers and Illinois, as we said, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan. Purdue 12-2, Rutgers 8-5. Michigan has climbed back up into the tie for second at 8-5. Northwestern is 8-5, and Indiana is 8-5. And then you got Illinois 7-5, Michigan State, Iowa, Maryland, all 7-6. So that's how the Big Ten shakes out. Wisconsin 6-7. Some of these teams have good net rankings, so you may still see some of these under 500 teams get some play on these power conferences as far as March Madness selections go. So that's the Big Ten. The best conference in basketball, top to bottom, is the Big 12. There are games today. Texas starts it all off against West Virginia, a 6.5 point favorite versus West Virginia, 149 the total. Kansas, a 3-point favorite at Oklahoma. They have a tough time on the road. Be careful. I know Oklahoma has not played well, but be careful taking Kansas today. Who did they win on Monday? They beat somebody on Monday. They beat Texas by 8 on Monday, covering the 4.5 point spread. So when they're at home, they play well. When they're on the road, as evidenced by the Iowa State game last Saturday, where they got blown out, they weren't even in that game against Iowa State on the road. So they're at Oklahoma. Baylor, a 1-point favorite at TCU. A little surprising. Baylor's played well, but TCU at home has been outstanding. 149 the total there. Baylor can put up points this year. Oklahoma State is a 6-point underdog to Iowa State. They got them earlier in Stillwater. Iowa State this time a 6-point favorite, 127 the total. And then a pick-em between number 12 Kansas State and Texas Tech. Texas Tech 12-12, Kansas State 19-5. But they have not won very many games. Texas is leading the Big 12 right now at 8-3. That's pretty good considering all the turmoil they've had with Chris Beard resigning or being fired, actually. Iowa State, Kansas State, Baylor, and Kansas, all 7-4. What a race in the Big 12. But then you've got Oklahoma State and TCU, both at 6-5, only 2 games back. West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech round out the bottom 3. Tech only 1-10 in conference. Oklahoma only 2-9 in conference. But don't underestimate those underdogs. I seem to remember 2 Saturdays ago, a Big 12 SEC challenge where Oklahoma, 2-9 now in conference, beat up on Alabama by 30-plus points. And Alabama, number 3 in the country at that point. They don't have a conference loss, but they lost to Oklahoma, and they lost badly. But Oklahoma on a 3-game losing streak right now. The hottest teams in the league are Oklahoma State. They've got a 4-game winning streak, though they didn't cover the last time they were out. All right, we did the Big East. We did the MAC, Missouri Valley Conference. Indiana State, a 3-point favorite over Northern Iowa, 145. Drake, 6.5 over Southern Illinois, 130 the total. One of my favorite teams is Belmont. I don't know if they either have won money on them or they're playing well right now. The Belmont Bruins are 12 against Illinois Chicago, 144.5. Bradley 10.5 versus Murray State, 138, and Valparaiso 3.5 versus Illinois State, 136.5. 3 teams atop the Missouri Valley Conference, a very underrated conference. Drake, Southern Illinois, and Bradley all 11-4. Belmont and Indiana State at 10-5. Missouri State 9-6. And even Northern Iowa and Murray State are both 8-7. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 of the 12 teams are 500 or better, and they're beating up on each other. Drake right now the hottest this week, 6 in a row they've won. Bradley has won 5 in a row. They're 12-1 at home. I believe they play tomorrow. These are the Saturday games. There's a few Sunday games, and we will get to the Sunday games on Sunday. Very little basketball, very little hockey. They've got Murray State. Bradley has Murray State. They're a 10.5-point favorite, 138 the total there. So they're pretty hot right now. And then one game tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern, Evansville and Missouri State. Okay, so there you have it. Missouri Valley Conference. The Pac-12, very interesting Pac-12 conference. After Thursday night, what happened Thursday night? The USC got blown out. USC got blown out by Oregon by 18. Arizona blew out Cal by 23. Arizona State rallied on Stanford. And then UCLA beat up on Oregon State. Did not cover 15.5. They only won by 15. But they held Oregon State to 47 points. So USC will get a shot at Oregon State. They're a 9-point road favorite, 130.5. Arizona, 9 at Stanford, 151 the total. Arizona, number 4 in the country. Arizona State, 9.5 at Cal, 129 the total there. The rally against Stanford. UCLA, 2.5 at Oregon, best game of the night. Oregon plays very well at home, but UCLA, number 7 in the country, has taken care of its opponents pretty handily. Last week they handled Washington State. They went under in that game, but they handled Washington State 2 Thursdays ago, I believe, was the – you know what? I'll just do it right now. Why not? UCLA beat up on Washington by 9 on Thursday. Saturday they beat up on Washington State by 24. So they've covered one of their last 2, one of their last 3 since they did not cover against Oregon State. So here we are. And then the interstate rivalry between Washington State and Washington. Washington State 7, 136.5. Utah 4 over Colorado at home, 136 is the total standings. UCLA 11-2, Arizona 11-3, USC 9-4, Oregon 9-5, along with Utah. Arizona State 8-6. Then it drops down. Colorado 6-8. Both Washington teams are 5-9. Stanford 4-9. Oregon State 3-11, and then Cal brings up the rear at 2-11. So you're looking at probably, I don't know, if I had to pick, I would probably look at 3 teams in the Pac-12 and maybe Oregon as a 4th team out of the Pac-12. All right, that's your Pac-12 schedule. SEC, big doings in the SEC. A lot of people still think this is the best conference. They are not the best conference, top to bottom. Alabama 11-0 in conference. A&M 9-2. Tennessee 8-3. Auburn and Kentucky 7-4. Florida, Missouri, Arkansas 6-5. Don't underestimate Arkansas. Even though they're 6-5, their net ranking is in the top 30. They've got 18 wins. They could be a sneaky good tournament team if they get in there. And then Vanderbilt, Georgia, Mississippi State, Mississippi, LSU, South Carolina. LSU got off to a really good start, and for some reason, I don't know what happened over there, but they turned a really good 7-3 start into a 12-12 overall year, 1-10 in conference play. So go figure that. They've lost 11 in a row. Actually, yeah, they've lost 11 in a row. They're 12-12. So they were 12-1 to start the year, and then they've lost 11 in a row. I don't know where I got 7-3 from. Must have been another team. But anyway, 12-12 overall, losers of 11 in a row. The hottest teams in the conference are Alabama winning 3 in a row, Arkansas winning 3 in a row. Let's see, Texas A&M has won 2 in a row, and Mississippi State has won 4 in a row. So here are the lines for the SEC. Kentucky 7.5 at Georgia, 141.5. Don't sleep on the Bulldogs. Mississippi 9.5 versus South Carolina. South Carolina 1-10 in conference play. Mississippi at 2-9, still a 9.5-point favorite. The Iron Bowl on the basketball court, Alabama 11-0 at Auburn, who is 7-4, 2.5-point favorite for Alabama, 153. Which Auburn team is going to show up? The team that can score a lot of points, or the team that locks it down defensively? That was watching molasses last Saturday against Tennessee for Auburn. Florida 9 over Vanderbilt. Florida's lost 2 in a row. Vanderbilt has won 2 in a row. So watch out there. 6-5 for Florida, 5-6 for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just upset Tennessee during the week as well, too, 139.5. Tennessee, speaking of which, 12-point favorite over Missouri, 141.5. Defensively, they can lock it down. But offensively, they've got a lot of challenges. 8-3 in conference play, 19-5 overall. Number 6 in the country in the rankings are the Tennessee Volunteers. Excuse me. Aforementioned Arkansas 6.5 versus Mississippi State. Both teams playing well, both teams locking it down defensively. Might see an under in this one there. I'm not sure. 129.5 is a good total, is a fair total, I think, for these two teams right now, the way they lock it down defensively. I already mentioned LSU struggles 11 in a row. Texas A&M second in the conference. Only 6.5. I say only because LSU can score, and they've played with some teams this year. 6.5 on the road for Texas A&M, 138.5. Okay, the last conference we hit, the WCC, St. Mary's, after their loss to Loyola Marymount. How about that? The Loyola Marymount Lions, the Kings, the Killer Kings, the King Killers for this conference. They beat Gonzaga earlier, and now they beat St. Mary's on Thursday night. St. Mary's still 10-1, still have a one-game lead on Gonzaga. They have that game in hand after beating Gonzaga in overtime last Saturday night. Gonzaga at 9-2, Loyola Marymount at 7-5, Santa Clara 6-5, BYU 6-6, then Pacific 5-6, Portland 5-7, USF at 4-8. Thought they would play better. USF did. They started off 11-4, but they're 4-8 in conference. They've lost 3 in a row. They're the team that's struggling the most in the WCC. University of San Diego also 4-8, and then Pepperdine finally got some conference wins. They're 2-10. So as far as the games for Saturday, St. Mary's 11.5-point favorite at Portland. Road teams are tough. I'm telling you, watch out. Road teams are tough. 11.5, 134.5. Santa Clara hosting Loyola Marymount. Watch out for Loyola Marymount. They just came off the overtime victory on Thursday night against St. Mary's. That was at home. So this is a road test for Loyola Marymount against Santa Clara. Gonzaga 12.5 over BYU. BYU lost Thursday at Pepperdine. Of all teams, they lost by 12. 12.5-point favorite here. 155.5 the total. Their games traditionally, since BYU joined the WCC, have gone way over the total. They've hit 160s, 170s in these games. San Francisco, a 10-point favorite over Pepperdine. San Francisco losers of 3 in a row. Pepperdine has their 2 conference wins in the last week and a half. And then UOP will host San Diego Toreros, 3-point favorite for the Pacific Tigers against the Toreros at 11-15 overall. UOP at, where's UOP? Pacific at 5-6 and USD at 4-8. So once again, St. Mary's 10-1, Gonzaga 9-2, Loyola Marymount 7-5. And then it drops down from there. So number 15, St. Mary's, will have their hands full at Portland. And number 16, Gonzaga, will have their hands full against BYU. All right, don't forget, tomorrow, Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern. First of 2 shows. We'll have some complete Super Bowl preview, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock West Coast time, 12 o'clock Arizona time. The Daily Post today at 11 a.m., as well as tomorrow at 11 a.m. I have the Super Bowl picks, prop bets, right after the preview show at 2 o'clock Eastern. So about 3 o'clock, we'll have the Daily Post for Super Bowl preview of the game itself, the player props, the Super Bowl props, the nonsensical ones, the interesting ones. There's over 200 of them, so there's just too many of them. I'll help you with some of them. I want to know what you think. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Tell me what props you like. Tell me who you like in the game. 1.5 right now for Philadelphia. 51 the total for the game on Fox Sports tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern from Glendale, 3:30 Pacific, 4:30 in Arizona on Sunday. Less than 36 hours away. Appreciate everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter for joining me for this live broadcast about 45 minutes after 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Coming up on the top of the hour, don't forget replays, the Daily Post at 11 o'clock until face-offs and tip-offs. And then the Daily Post will continue on Saturday as we do with multiple Daily Post selections for each section of college basketball on Saturday. Less than a month away for March Madness, less than a month away for Selection Sunday. But we've got to get through the Super Bowl first. Who do you like? Let me know. Eagles are 1.5. Kansas City, 51 the total in the game for tomorrow. I appreciate everybody for being on with me this early in the morning. Thanks to everybody for joining me. Thanks for all your support. Again, if you miss any of it, you get the replay coming up at the top of the hour. We'll do 2 more replays, and then you can download it anytime, anywhere you want on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. Have a great Saturday. Good luck with your games. We will talk to you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, for Super Bowl Sunday. Some college basketball, some NBA, some NHL. But it's Super Bowl Sunday, Super Bowl 57, from the desert in Arizona with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. Until then, have a great day. See you tomorrow. We will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.